There is a strange thing that happens in the credit system, and most people do not understand it until it costs them money. You can use your credit card responsibly, you can pay the entire balance, you can avoid interest, you can avoid late fees, you can do what you were taught to do, and then a few days later, your credit score can fall. Not because you were late, not because you missed a payment, not because you were irresponsible, but because the system did not measure what you thought it measured. That is the important lesson. The credit system does not look at your financial life the way a rational person would if they had full information. It does not sit beside you and watch whether you had the money in your bank account. It does not know that you plan to pay the card in full. It does not care that you never intended to carry debt. It takes a snapshot one day, one number. And that number can affect nearly 1/3 of your credit score. That is the mechanism most people miss. Imagine you have a credit card with a $5,000 limit. During the month, you spend $2,000 groceries, gasoline, subscriptions, ordinary expenses. You are not spending money you do not have. The cash is sitting in your checking account. You intend to pay the full bill as soon as it arrives. The bill arrives, you pay it in full, zero interest, zero late fees. You believe you handled credit perfectly. Then your credit score drops 20 points. Most people think something must be wrong. They think maybe the bank made a mistake. They think maybe the credit bureau has an error. They think maybe identity theft happened. But in many cases, nothing is broken. The system is operating exactly as designed. It simply reported the wrong-looking number at the wrong time. This is why timing matters. Most people believe that when they pay the bill on the due date, the credit bureaus see the account as paid. They imagine that the bureaus receive the clean final result. They imagine the credit report reflects the responsible behavior. That is not how it works. The credit bureaus do not watch your account in real time. They do not update the moment you make a payment. They do not wait until your due date to see whether you paid in full. Your bank usually reports your balance to the credit bureaus once per month. That report is often tied to the statement closing date. This is the day your billing cycle ends and the bank creates your statement. Whatever balance exists at that moment is the balance that may be reported to Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. Then weeks later, your payment due date arrives. This sequence is the trap. The number that affects your utilization may be captured before you actually have a chance to pay the bill under the normal due date system. So you can pay on time and still report high utilization. You can be responsible in reality and look risky on paper. That is the gap. And in finance, gaps between reality and reported numbers can create opportunity or damage, depending on whether you understand them. The first principle is that credit scoring is not a moral judgment. It is not saying whether you are good or bad. It is a model. Models look at inputs. One of the biggest inputs is utilization. Utilization means the percentage of your available credit that appears used when the issuer reports. If your credit limit is $5,000 and the reported balance is $2,000, your utilization on that card is 40%. If the reported balance is $100, your utilization is 2%. Same person, same spending, same income, same full payment behavior, different reported balance, different score impact. That is why understanding the reporting date is so important. The due date protects you from late fees and interest. The statement closing date often controls what gets reported to the bureaus. Those are not the same date. Most people know the due date because the bank displays it clearly. Banks want to make sure you pay on time, but the closing date is often less obvious. You may need to look at a prior statement, find the billing cycle end date, or look for the next statement closing date inside the app or website. If you only manage the due date, you are protecting payment history. That is good, but you are not controlling utilization. To control utilization, you need to manage the balance before the statement closes. This is the loophole. It is not a dishonest loophole. It is not fraud. It is not gaming the system in a malicious way. It is simply understanding when the picture is taken and making sure the account looks clean when the camera clicks. The bank is going to send a snapshot anyway. You can decide what that snapshot shows. Now, why does this matter so much? Your credit score is usually built from several categories. Payment history is the largest. It is about 35% of the score. That makes sense because lenders want to know whether you pay your bills. The next major category is amounts owed, which is heavily influenced by credit utilization. It is about 30% of the score. Think about that carefully. Nearly 1/3 of your credit score can be heavily affected by the balance that happens to appear on one specific reporting day. That is not a small detail. That is a major lever. If you understand it, you can make your credit report reflect your true risk better. If you do not understand it, you may let the bank report your worst day of the month. This is why someone can be responsible and still see a score drop. They may use 40% of a card's limit during the month, then pay it in full. From a cash flow standpoint, they are safe. From a credit scoring standpoint, if the statement closes before the payment, the model sees high usage. And models react to high usage because high utilization can be a signal of financial stress. The scoring system does not know whether you are temporarily using the card for rewards and will pay it off tomorrow. It sees the snapshot, that is all. Now, utilization has two layers. The first layer is overall utilization. This is the total balance across all revolving credit divided by the total credit limits. For example, if you have $50,000 in total credit limits and $2,500 reported across all cards, your overall utilization is 5%. That looks strong. The second layer is individual card utilization. This is where many people get surprised. You can have low overall utilization and still take a hit if one card is highly used. Suppose you have $50,000 of total available credit across several cards, but one small card has a $600 limit and reports a $580 balance. That one card is nearly maxed out. The model may treat that as a warning signal even if your overall utilization is low. This is why you must manage both the total picture and the individual card picture. Overall, low utilization is good, but a single maxed out card can still damage your score. This is one of the parts many people do not know. They assume the system only looks at the total. It does not. The system can also punish concentration of usage on one account. The result can be dramatic. Someone with a strong score can drop 30 or 40 points because a large purchase happened on a low limit card and was reported before payment. Nothing else changed. No late payment, no new collection, no new loan, just a bad snapshot. The good news is that utilization is usually one of the most flexible parts of the score. Unlike a late payment, which can stay on a credit report for years, utilization can reset quickly when a new lower balance is reported. If this month reports high utilization, the score can drop. If next month reports low utilization, the score can recover. That is powerful. It means the problem is often fixable quickly if you understand the timing. A late payment is a wound. High utilization is often more like bad lighting in a photograph. Take a better photo next month, and the model may respond. Now, there are newer scoring models that may track utilization trends over time. Some models, such as FICO 10T, can consider balance history. That means the old idea that utilization has no memory may become less absolute in the future. But many lenders still use older models where the most recent reported utilization is extremely important. So the strategy still matters. The core idea is simple. Do not wait until the bill is created. Pay before the statement closes. If your statement closes on the 15th, you do not want a high balance sitting there on the 15th. You want to reduce the balance a few days before that. Why a few days before? Because payments can take time to post. If you make the payment the night before closing and the bank posts it after the statement closes, the old balance may still be reported. So you create a buffer. 2 to 4 days before the closing date, you log into the account and make a manual payment. If your balance is $2,000 on a $5,000 limit, that is 40% utilization. You do not want that reported. You might pay down $1,900, leaving $100. Now the statement closes with a $100 balance. The reported utilization is 2%. Then, when the actual due date arrives, you pay the remaining $100, no interest, no late fees, the bank is paid. The credit bureau sees a low balance, the score sees low utilization. This is not cheating, it is timing. You are not hiding debt, you are paying it down before the reporting date. You are making the reported number reflect a more accurate picture of your risk. You had the money, you used the card, you paid it, you controlled the snapshot, that is the whole strategy, but now comes another counterintuitive part. If low utilization is good, many people assume zero utilization must be perfect. That sounds logical. But in credit scoring, all zero reporting is not always optimal. The scoring system is designed to evaluate how you manage credit. If every card reports zero every month, the model may see too little active revolving usage. You are not showing that you can use credit lightly and manage it well. You may still have a great score, but the absolute best scoring behavior often comes from showing a small balance on one card. This is where the 1% rule enters. People with very high credit scores often show very low utilization, not necessarily zero. The ideal range is often around 1 to 6%. The balance is small enough to show almost no risk, but not so small that the system sees no usage at all. The strategy that many credit optimizers use is called all zero except one. AZIO, all zero except one, means that before the statement closes, you pay all cards down to zero except one card. You let a tiny balance report. It might be $10, it might be $20. It depends on the credit limit and reporting requirements. The goal is to have one small amount reported, often around 1% of that card. S limit, or a very low dollar amount. Then after the statement closes, you pay that remaining balance by the due date. That is the key. You are not carrying a balance. Carrying a balance means allowing debt to remain past the due date and paying interest. This strategy does not require interest. You still pay in full. You simply allow one tiny balance to appear on the statement before clearing it. That tells the model two things. You are using credit, and you are using it very lightly. That combination can produce excellent utilization scoring. Now, I want to be very clear. You should never miss a payment trying to leave a small balance. A missed payment does far more damage than utilization ever will. Payment history is still the largest factor in the score, so the 1% strategy should be used with reminders and auto pay for the final due date payment. Do not become so obsessed with optimizing utilization that you create a late payment. That is losing the war to win a tiny battle. The proper hierarchy is simple. First, never miss payments. Second, avoid interest. Third, control utilization. Fourth, optimize the small details. That order matters. Now, how do you actually implement this? Step 1 is to find the statement closing date for every credit card. Do not confuse this with the due date. The due date is when the payment must be made to avoid interest and late fees. The closing date is when the statement cycle ends and the balance is usually captured. Look inside your credit card app or website, go to previous statements, look for statement closing date, billing cycle end date, or next closing date. Write it down. Do this for every card. If you have 5 cards, you need 5 closing dates. They may not all be the same. Some may close on the 5th, some on the 12th, some on the 23rd. This is the calendar that matters. Step 2 is to set reminders 2 to 4 days before each closing date. If a card closes on the 15th, set the reminder for the 11th or 12th. The buffer helps payments post before the snapshot. Do not rely on memory. Memory fails. Use calendar reminders, use phone reminders, use recurring tasks, use whatever system you actually follow. Credit optimization is a systems problem. The people who do it well are not necessarily smarter. They use systems that reduce mistakes. Step 3 is to make the manual payment on the reminder day. Log in. Look at the current balance. Decide what number you want reported. If using the 1% rule, calculate the small balance to leave on the one card that will report, pay everything else down. If the card has a $5,000 limit and you want 1 to 2% utilization, you may leave $50 to $100. If you want a tiny balance like $10 or $20, make sure the issuer will report it properly and that the balance is not so small it gets adjusted or forgiven by the bank. For all other cards, pay them down to 0. Before their statements close, step 4 is to pay the remaining small balance by the due date. After the statement closes, you will receive the statement showing that small balance. Now that balance must be paid before the due date. You can use autopay for this final step. Autopay is useful for avoiding late payments, but it is not enough for controlling utilization because autopay usually happens after the statement closes. This is one of the major misconceptions. Autopay protects your payment history. It does not optimize your reported balance. If you rely only on autopay, the bank may report the full statement balance first. Then autopay clears it later. That is too late for utilization, so use manual pre-statement payments for the snapshot and autopay for the due date safety net. That is a strong system. Step 5 is to avoid credit cycling. Credit cycling means repeatedly maxing out a card, paying it down, then maxing it out again within the same cycle. For example, if you have a $1,000 limit and you spend $1,000, pay it down, spend $1,000 again, and repeat. The bank may see that as risky behavior even if you pay in full. Banks can flag this. They may review the account, they may freeze the account, they may reduce or close the account. Why? Because cycling can look like financial stress, manufactured spending, or suspicious activity. If you constantly need to use more than the limit, the better solution is often to request a credit limit increase, use multiple cards responsibly, or reduce credit card dependence. A higher limit can naturally lower utilization. If your normal monthly spending is $2,000 and your limit is $5,000, your utilization can look high if it reports at the wrong time. If your limit is $20,000, the same $2,000 is only 10%. Limits matter because utilization is a ratio. Increasing the denominator reduces the ratio, but do not request credit limit increases if it encourages more spending. A higher limit should be used to improve flexibility and utilization, not to create a larger debt trap. That is very important. Credit is a tool. A larger tool can help or hurt depending on the person using it. Now, let us talk about why this system is so powerful. A credit score affects more than credit cards. It can affect mortgage rates. It can affect auto loan rates. It can affect rental applications. It can affect insurance in some states. It can affect approvals for financial products. It can affect whether you qualify for the best terms. A 20 or 30-point difference may not matter every day, but it can matter when you are applying for a mortgage, refinancing, buying a car, or seeking a major loan. The best time to optimize credit is before you need credit. Most people wait until they are already applying for something. That is backwards. If you know you will apply for a mortgage in 3 or 6 months, you should begin managing utilization. Now you should make sure all cards report low balances. You should avoid new unnecessary accounts. You should avoid large balances closing on statements. You should review your credit reports for errors. You should prepare before the lender checks. Credit is like a balance sheet reputation system. You should not wait until the meeting to clean it up. Now there is a broader principle here that applies beyond credit. Systems often measure what is convenient to measure, not what is perfectly true. Your credit report does not show your intention. It shows reported balances. It does not show that you had cash ready. It shows the snapshot. It does not show your stress level or discipline. It shows data points. If the model is going to judge you by data points, you need to understand which data points matter. This is not unfair in the emotional sense. It is mechanical. Mechanisms do not care whether you knew the rules. They simply operate. That is why financial education matters. You do not have to like every system, but if you live inside the system, you should understand it. Now, let us go through the timeline again because this is where people get confused. A credit card cycle runs for around 30 days. During that cycle, you spend at the end of the cycle, the statement closes, the bank creates a statement balance. That balance is commonly reported to the credit bureaus. After that, you have roughly 3 weeks or more until the payment due date. If you pay by the due date, you avoid interest and late fees, but from the credit bureau's point of view, the statement balance may have already been recorded. So if you want low utilization reported, the balance must be low before the statement closes. This one change can transform how your credit profile looks. It can take the same real-world behavior and make it appear much cleaner to the scoring model. Now, people often ask whether they should pay multiple times during the month. You can. There is nothing wrong with paying mid-cycle if it helps manage utilization and spending discipline, but the most important payment is the one before the closing date. If you use your card heavily early in the month and pay it down well before closing, that may help. If you make a big purchase right before closing and do not pay it down before the snapshot, that may hurt. So focus on the closing date. This is the control point. Now, what if your issuer reports on a date other than statement closing? Some issuers may report at different times or report when accounts are updated or after major changes. The statement closing date is the most common and most important starting point, but it is wise to verify. You can check your credit report and see when balances are updated. You can watch the pattern for a few months. If your bank reports on a different schedule, adjust the strategy. The principle is still the same. Know when the snapshot happens. Make sure the balance is low before the snapshot. Now, I want to discuss the difference between good credit and good finances. They are related, but they are not the same. A person can have a high credit score and still be financially fragile. They may pay on time and keep utilization low, but have no emergency fund, no investments, no retirement savings, and too much reliance on credit. A credit score is not wealth. It is a borrowing reputation. It tells lenders how you have handled debt and credit. That is useful. But it is not the same as a strong balance sheet. You can optimize your credit score while still making bad life decisions if you spend too much, borrow unnecessarily, or chase status. So use this strategy properly. Use it to make your credit report accurate and strong. Do not use it as an excuse to spend more. The goal is not to appear safe while becoming unsafe. The goal is to be safe and have the score reflect it. That is the correct mindset. Now, credit utilization has no perfect universal number, but the logic is clear. Below 30% is usually considered acceptable. Below 10% is usually stronger. Around 1 to 6% can be excellent for scoring purposes. But these ranges are not permission to carry debt. They are reporting ranges. The best strategy is often to use the card, pay it down before closing. Let a tiny balance report on one card if optimizing, and pay everything by the due date. Never pay interest for the sake of credit. That is one of the worst myths. You do not need to carry a balance and pay interest to build credit. You need to use credit responsibly and have that responsible behavior reported. Interest is not a credit building fee, it is a cost. Avoid it. Now let us look at why zero on every card can be slightly less optimal. The credit model wants to see that you can manage revolving debt if all cards report zero. The model may not see active use. It may still score you well, especially if everything else is strong. But the absolute maximum scoring outcome often comes from one small reported balance. This is why all zero except one works. All cards zero except one tiny balance, that is the balance between showing activity and showing low risk. But if you only have one card, the strategy is simpler. Let a small balance report on that one card, then pay it by the due date. If you have multiple cards, choose one card for the small reported balance and keep the others reporting zero. You can rotate which card reports if you want, but you do not have to. The important part is that the reported balances remain low and payments are always on time. Now, what if you have a card with a very low limit? Low limit cards are easier to spike. A $300 purchase on a $600 limit is 50% utilization. A $300 purchase on a $10,000 limit is 3% utilization. Same purchase, different score impact. This is why small limit cards can be dangerous if used carelessly. If you have low limit cards, pay them down before closing or avoid putting large purchases on them. Use higher limit cards for larger purchases if you can manage them responsibly, or request limit increases over time. Again, the goal is not to borrow more. The goal is to prevent normal spending from looking like financial stress. Now, if your score is already very high, utilization optimization may produce smaller gains. If your score is 820, the difference between 1% and 8% utilization may not matter much in daily life. But if you are about to apply for a mortgage, every point can matter. If your score is in the 600s or low 700s, utilization management may produce larger visible changes. But if you have late payments, collections, charge-offs, or serious derogatory marks, utilization is only one part of the problem. You still need to address the negative items. You still need to build positive payment history. You still need time. Utilization is powerful because it can change quickly, but it cannot erase all other credit issues. That is important. If your score is low because utilization is high, this strategy may help quickly. If your score is low because of missed payments and collections, the strategy may help but not solve everything. Diagnose the real problem. Do not assume one lever fixes the whole machine. Now, let us talk about credit repair carefully. Credit reports can contain errors, wrong balances, duplicate accounts, accounts that do not belong to you, outdated negative information. Collections with inaccurate details. If information is wrong, you have the right to dispute it through the proper channels. But do not confuse legitimate credit repair with trying to hide accurate bad behavior. The strongest credit profile is built through reality. Pay on time. Keep utilization low. Avoid unnecessary debt. Maintain older accounts when sensible. Use credit intentionally. Review reports for errors. Let time heal past mistakes. Credit repair can help when there are inaccuracies, but future behavior is still the foundation. Now, let us build the actual operating system in a practical way. The first calendar is the closing date calendar. Every card has a closing date. Write it down, set reminders. The second calendar is the due date calendar. Every card has a due date. Set auto pay for at least the minimum, preferably the statement balance if you can reliably fund it to prevent missed payments. The third system is the utilization rule. Before closing date, pay all cards down to zero except one. On one card, leave a tiny balance after closing date. Pay the tiny balance before due date. The fourth system is the limit management rule. Avoid maxing out individual cards. Ask for credit limit increases when appropriate. Do not credit cycle aggressively. The fifth system is the monthly review. Check reports periodically. Make sure reported balances match your expectations. Make sure no unfamiliar accounts appear. Make sure no payments were missed. This does not take much time once organized. The problem is not complexity. The problem is that most people never build the calendar. They rely on due dates and assume the rest will work. That assumption is what causes surprise score drops. Now, there is a deeper behavioral lesson here. The credit system rewards people who understand timing. The person who pays in full after the statement closes may be financially responsible, but the system can still report high utilization. The person who pays before the statement closes may look safer to the model. Same total payment, different timing. This is true in many areas of finance. Timing of income affects taxes. Timing of capital gains affects tax liability. Timing of retirement withdrawals affects tax brackets and Medicare premiums. Timing of market withdrawals affects sequence risk. Timing of loan payments affects credit reporting. Timing matters because systems are built around dates. If you know the dates, you can make better decisions. If you ignore the dates, the system acts on you. That is the difference between being passive and being in control. Now, what should someone do this week? First, log into every credit card account. Second, find the statement closing date or billing cycle end date. Third, record each one. Fourth, set recurring reminders 2 to 4 days before each closing date. Fifth, decide which card will report the small balance. Sixth, before each closing date, pay the balances down so that all cards report zero except one. Tiny balance 7th, after the statement closes, pay the remaining balance by the due date. 8th, verify the next month through your credit report or score monitoring that the low balances were reported. This is simple, but it must be done consistently. 1 month helps, repeated months create a cleaner profile. Now, I want to address something that may sound minor but matters. Do not obsess over achieving exactly 1% if it makes the system complicated. The goal is very low utilization. If one card reports 2% or 3%, that may still be excellent. The point is not perfection. The point is controlling the snapshot. Financial systems should be simple enough to repeat. If you make the system too complex, you may fail to execute it. A good enough system repeated every month is better than a perfect system you abandon. That is a principle of behavior. Now, what happens if you make a large purchase? If you need to make a large purchase on a credit card for rewards or protection, understand the closing date. If the purchase happens early in the cycle, you have time to pay it down before closing. If it happens right before closing, you may need to pay immediately or use a card whose closing date is further away. This is how high-score users think. They do not avoid credit cards entirely. They manage reporting. They know which card closes when. They know where to place spending. They pay down before the snapshot. This is not hard once the calendar is built. Now, if you are applying for a major loan soon, become even more careful. For the 2 to 3 months before a mortgage or auto loan application, keep reported balances very low. Avoid opening unnecessary new accounts. Avoid large statement balances. Avoid credit cycling. Avoid anything that makes the report look unstable. Lenders look at reports at specific times. You want the report to show the cleanest, lowest risk version of your credit behavior. Again, this is not deception. It is preparation. Now, what about people who are afraid to use credit cards at all because their score drops when they use them? That fear is understandable but not necessary. Credit cards are tools. If you pay in full, avoid interest, and control reporting, they can help you build a strong profile. If you overspend, carry balances, miss payments, or treat limits as income, they can destroy you. The tool is neutral. Behavior determines the outcome. If you cannot control spending with credit cards, then using them heavily may not be wise. The first priority is financial control, not score optimization. A high score is not worth creating debt you cannot pay. But if you already pay in full and simply get punished by reporting timing, this strategy can help. Now let us think about the credit system from a lender's point of view. The lender wants to estimate risk. High utilization can suggest that a borrower is under pressure. If someone uses 80 or 90% of available credit, the model may infer that they are relying heavily on credit and may be closer to default if anything goes wrong. That is why utilization matters. But the system cannot perfectly distinguish between a person who temporarily used a card for points and a person who is financially strained. It only sees the reported balance. So you must make sure the reported balance sends the right signal. Low utilization says, I have access to credit, but I do not depend on it. That is a strong signal. The 1% rule says, I use credit, but I control it. That is even cleaner. This is the profile lenders like now. There is another advantage to low utilization. It can make you more likely to qualify for better credit offers, higher limits, and lower rates. As your limits rise, utilization becomes easier to manage. That can create a positive feedback loop. Low utilization improves score. Improved score helps approvals. Higher limits lower utilization. Lower utilization helps score. Better credit can reduce borrowing costs. Lower borrowing costs save money. This is how small credit management behaviors can compound. The opposite is also true. High utilization lowers score. Lower score creates worse terms. Worse terms raise costs. Higher costs increase financial pressure. Financial pressure increases utilization. This is how a system deteriorates. Credit systems create feedback loops. You want to be on the positive side. Now, let me make a distinction between reported balance and debt. A reported balance is not automatically bad. A balance can report and then be paid in full by the due date. Debt becomes costly when it carries interest or creates stress. The credit model sees reported balances as utilization, but your personal financial health depends on whether you are actually carrying debt and paying interest. Do not let score optimization cause you to misunderstand the real objective. The real objective is to have strong finances, pay in full, avoid interest, keep cash, use credit responsibly. Let the report show low utilization. That is the order. Now, if you have only one card and a low limit, the strategy may still work but can be harder. Suppose your limit is $500. A normal month of $300 of spending is 60% utilization if it reports. You can pay down before closing, but the low limit means you have little room over time. Request a limit increase or consider adding another card only if you are disciplined and it makes sense. But do not open cards impulsively just for score hacking. New accounts can reduce average age of credit and create hard inquiries. Everything has trade-offs. A limit increase on an existing account can sometimes be helpful if it does not require a hard inquiry, but issuers vary. Again, ask questions before acting. Now, let us review the 5 components of a credit score at a high level. Payment history is the biggest amounts owed, driven by utilization is next length. Of credit history matters, new credit matters, credit mix matters. This strategy focuses mainly on the amounts owed category. It does not replace the others. If you close old accounts, miss payments, apply for many new accounts, or have no installment history. Other categories may still affect the score, but utilization is one of the most controllable levers because it can be changed quickly without waiting years. That is why the strategy is so useful. It gives you a lever that responds fast. Most financial improvement takes time. Credit utilization can improve quickly when managed correctly. Now, I want to explain why banks do not emphasize this. Banks are not necessarily hiding the information in a dramatic way, but their incentives are not perfectly aligned with your score optimization. Banks care that you pay by the due date. They also earn money from interchange fees when you use cards, interest when you carry balances, annual fees, and other revenue streams. They do not have a strong incentive to teach every customer how to optimize reported utilization perfectly. The due date is what matters for their contract. The closing date is what matters for your report. That difference is your responsibility. This is another important principle. Institutions usually educate you only to the level required for their system to function. If you want the system to benefit you optimally, you often need to learn the deeper mechanics yourself. Now let us talk about the language of the source. It calls this a loophole. I understand why. To the ordinary borrower, it feels like a loophole because paying before the statement exists changes how the bureaus see you. But from a systems perspective, it is simply managing the reporting process. The rules are known. The timing is knowable. The behavior is legitimate. You are not avoiding payment. You are paying earlier. That is a good thing. The credit model rewards it because the reported risk is lower. So do not feel uncomfortable using this strategy. It is responsible credit management. Now, what if you already have high utilization right now? Do not panic. Because utilization can reset quickly, you can often improve the situation within 1 or 2 reporting cycles. Pay balances down before the next closing dates. Let the low balances report, monitor the score. The score may respond quickly if utilization was the main issue. If it does not, look deeper. Check for late payments, collections, charge-offs, hard inquiries, new accounts, errors, identity issues, credit age. You need to diagnose the whole report. But starting with utilization is often the fastest improvement. Now, I want to connect this to larger financial decisions. A stronger credit score can save you real money on a mortgage. A better score can mean a lower interest rate. A lower interest rate on a large loan can save tens of thousands of dollars. On an auto loan, it can save thousands. On insurance. In some places, it may reduce premiums. On rental applications, it may affect approval. So even though this strategy sounds like a small monthly timing trick, the long-term consequences can be large. A few minutes of monthly management can improve the terms of much bigger financial decisions. That is leverage, not debt leverage, behavioral leverage, small correct action, large possible future benefit. Now, there is one more mistake to avoid. Do not let credit score optimization become your whole financial identity. A perfect credit score is not the ultimate goal. A strong credit score is a tool. The goal is financial freedom, resilience, and control. If you have an 850 credit score but no assets, you are not financially free. If you have an 850 credit score but carry stress and live paycheck to paycheck, you are not secure. If you have an 850 credit score and use it to borrow too much, the score may become a trap. Credit is useful because it can reduce costs and increase options. But wealth comes from assets, income savings, investing, and disciplined spending. So use credit intelligently. Do not worship the score. Now, here is the complete framework in one flow. Credit bureaus do not see your real-time payment behavior. Your bank reports a balance. Often when the statement closes, that balance affects utilization. Utilization affects about 30% of the score. Both overall utilization and individual card utilization matter. High utilization can hurt even if you pay in full by the due date. Utilization can reset quickly when a lower balance is reported. To control it, find your statement closing date. Pay the balance down 2 to 4 days before the statement closes. Use all 0 except 1 if you want optimal reporting. Let one tiny balance report. Pay that balance by the due date. Use auto pay as protection against missed payments. but do not rely on it to control reporting. Avoid credit cycling, request credit limit increases responsibly when appropriate. Review your credit report for other issues if your score remains low. That is the system. It is not complicated, but it is powerful. Now, the final lesson is about control. Before you understand this, you let the bank decide what your credit report looks like. If the snapshot catches a high balance, your score may fall. If it catches a low balance, your score may improve. Once you understand the calendar, you take control of the photograph. You stop letting the bank snap the picture on your worst day. You clean up the balance before the camera clicks. That is the whole idea, and it is a good example of how money works more generally. People who do not understand the rules are controlled by them. People who understand the rules can operate within them intelligently. The credit system is not reading your mind, it is reading data, so give it the right data. Pay on time. Pay before the statement closes. Report low utilization. Leave one small balance if optimizing. Pay the rest by the due date. Repeat. If you do that, you may not become rich from a credit score alone, but you will remove one of the most unnecessary sources of financial friction from your life. And in finance, removing friction matters. Lower interest rates, better approvals, cleaner reports, more options, less stress. That is what good credit can give you. But only if you manage the system instead of letting the system manage you.